From L.
The quarterback that led Ohio State down the field to be able to win on the road at Notre Dame. That quarterback that nearly led Ohio State to a win over Michigan, 30 to 35 yards away from possibly putting that ball in the end zone and completing an undefeated season for the Ohio State Buckeyes. That quarterback is in the transfer portal. And it's because Ryan Day probably wants great at Ohio State instead of good.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
I've been saying this since the beginning. I think a lot of people have been saying this as well. Kyle McCord is a good quarterback, but you know what he's not? He's not C.J. Stroud. He's not Justin Fields. He's not the standard at quarterback at Ohio State. The Buckeyes have such high expectations, and their track record speaks for itself from Urban Meyer going into Ryan Day. The track record is there at Ohio State. And what this transfer, what Kyle McCord entering the transfer portal really tells me is Ryan Day at the end of the season saying, I can do better. We can do better. I know that the quarterback transfer portal market is going to be hot. It is going to be spicy. And I look what I got in Kyle McCord, and I think we can do better. If we want to take that next step, if we want to beat Michigan, we have to do better to get back to our standard at the quarterback position for the Ohio State Buckeyes. So you know what this transfer portal entry really screams to me? It screams to me that Ryan Day met with Kyle, probably similar to what PJ Fleck did with Ethan Kaliak-Manis in Minnesota. Met with him at the end of the season and said, hey, Kyle, you did good, but we have a little bit of a higher standard here at Ohio State. Thank you for your service to Buckeye football, but we're going in a different direction. Of course, Kyle McCord didn't want to kind of stick around. Ohio State and Ryan Day probably said, we're going after a quarterback in the transfer portal, so thanks but no thanks. You can kind of move on to greener pastures. It's kind of the reality in college football right now. Okay, I might know this might be tough, but this is the reality. When the transfer portal is the way it is, when you see the names that are out there in the quarterback transfer portal market, it may, like at first I was a little bit surprised. Wow, Kyle McCord in the portal, an 11-1 quarterback. But then when you kind of step a few steps back and you really think about it, it's not that surprising whatsoever, considering the pressure that is on Ryan Day at Ohio State, considering the standard in Buckeye land, and considering the day and age that we live in with the transfer portal and all that is out there. The expectations are sky high in Columbus, Ohio, and I think that's why this move was made. When you look at Kyle McCord and his numbers and his journey at Ohio State, it's pretty good. Good, but not great. Kyle McCord enrolled at Ohio State in 2021, high 4-star, low 5-star, depending what service you really look at. Sat a couple of years, stayed in Columbus, Ohio. A lot of quarterbacks in that Ohio State quarterback room transferred out. Jack Miller transferred out. Of course, Quinn Ewers transferred out and ended up at Texas, but Kyle McCord stuck around. Started his junior season, this season, of course, in 2023 with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And when you look at his numbers, they're pretty good. A lot of teams in college football would kill for those numbers. Iowa would kill for those numbers. Nebraska would kill for those numbers. A lot of colleges would kill for a guy like Kyle McCord, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But when you factor in the talent level that is in Columbus, Ohio, the wide receiver room that they had this season, it just wasn't good enough for the folks in Columbus, Ohio, despite those statistics over there with Kyle McCord. So here's the thing that we need to keep in mind with Kyle McCord. Kyle, you got to understand you're going to take a step down in the offense, in the talent that you will have around you. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a generational wide receiver. It would not surprise me if in 2 years, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in the National Football League. Emeka Egbuka, Cade Stover, even a Trevion Henderson right there to kind of lean on in the backfield. Kyle McCord is going to take a step down in the offense that he's in and the guys that he's throwing the football to. So that needs to be factored in a little bit. Did these Ohio State wide receivers, did this offense bail out Kyle McCord a little bit? I just showed you the numbers. What did the numbers look like without Marvin Harrison Jr., without Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, even like a guy like a freshman Carnell Tate that got some big catches at some points during this season? What does it look like then? That's something that needs to be factored in as well. And what Kyle McCord, look, he is a gutsy quarterback. That drive against Notre Dame, he made some big throws. In the Michigan game, he made some big throws, but those games are kind of maybe a microcosm of this season for Kyle McCord. Did he make some big plays? Absolutely. Did he throw some balls behind Marvin and behind some of these wide receivers? Was he inaccurate? Yes, inaccurate and inconsistent are maybe two words at times to describe Kyle McCord. Maybe more inconsistent than inaccurate. At times he was inaccurate, but a lot of times he was inconsistent, where when he was good, he was really good. But we just didn't see that enough from Kyle McCord throughout his time in Columbus, Ohio. Now, let's look at the future for Kyle McCord and the future for Ohio State, because I think this is actually a little bit more intriguing what's happening in Columbus maybe than with Kyle. Let's first focus on Kyle McCord. You know the name of the channel. I'm going to be focused on the Big Ten Conference. What are some Big Ten schools that could possibly go after Kyle McCord? First one I want to take a look at is the Wisconsin Badgers. There's a lot of people right now entering the transfer portal from Wisconsin. You're de-christing your roster right now, and maybe it's time to Longoize your roster in Madison, Wisconsin. You can do a lot worse than Kyle McCord, folks. You can do a lot worse, Wisconsin. Phil Longo has a track record at developing quarterbacks at North Carolina. Maybe this is the offseason where Wisconsin goes all the way into the deep end of the pool in really making this a Phil Longo type of offense, making this a team that opens up their offense a little bit. Maybe Kyle McCord is that quarterback that ends up in Madison, Wisconsin. What about Maryland? Maryland was involved in the recruitment of Kyle McCord. Of course, Kyle McCord from the state of Pennsylvania. Could that be a going home of sorts? I know it's not, obviously not in the state of Pennsylvania, but around that area up in the Northeast. Maryland losing Taulia Tagovailoa. How invested and confident are they in Billy Edwards right now, the backup quarterback that's been around there? Billy's a runner, but how good is he as a thrower right now, I think, is the big question over there at Maryland. I could see the Terps getting involved, but that's just lying within the Big Ten. I know other schools are obviously going to get involved as well. Let's talk about Ohio State. The game just changed, folks. The game just changed. Oregon was out there. Washington was out there. Of course, USC, the quarterback factory that Lincoln Riley has really established there. They're out there, but I'll tell you what, folks. Ohio State now being involved in the transfer quarterback market changes the game, because alongside USC, the track record speaks for itself at Ohio State at developing guys that become high NFL draft picks. The last two guys, Justin Fields, and then you look at what CJ Stroud is doing with the Houston Texans in the National Football League. Folks, Ohio State is going to be a major player. The Dante Moores, the Cam Wards, the Dylan Gabriels, they're all going to be in the mix at Ohio State. But something tells me Ryan Day had his eyes maybe on somebody. Here's another thing to keep in mind. If I'm a quarterback that has not yet entered the transfer portal, I might be wanting to hit the portal if I'm a really good quarterback, because I could maybe play at Ohio State. I could play at a program that recruits the best wide receivers in the country. I could play at a team that will be in the Big Ten championship hunt. That's pretty enticing. That's pretty enticing right there. This is the world we live in, folks. We're a quarterback that goes 11-1, that nearly goes undefeated, is in the transfer portal and is looking for a new home for the 2024 season. Folks, it's crazy. Insane. What are we going to do in this show? Folks, things are happening by the second. By the second. I know this show was titled Quarterback Transfer Portal Madness, But it's more than quarterback. Skylar Bell, Chemray Dickey, 2 Christ-era wide receivers at Wisconsin are in the transfer portal. So I mentioned about the Badgers really moving to the next generation. It might happen this year. Wisconsin is in the hunt for Cam Ward. Folks, things are going to happen as we go. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun late morning here and early afternoon here on the channel. All right, wow. We need to take a deep breath. This is a big 24, 48 type of hours now with kids going in the portal. You're going to start to see some commitments pretty soon with this thing open. Going for Gold 85. Thank you for the $5. Thank you for the super chat. I expect it to be a busy morning, so if you want to guarantee that your chat gets seen, attaching a donation by hitting that $ is the best way to do it. Hello, Ted. Going for Gold 85. Husker fan here. Glad to see everyone today. Man, portal madness and a controversial playoff selection. Things are heating up in college football. Going for Gold 85 says this is why we love it. Remember when the regular season ended, Thanksgiving morning or Thanksgiving weekend, and then we didn't hear any. I know there were bowl games for a while, but we really didn't hear any significant big college football news for 2 or 3 weeks. Those days are over. The college football playoff is going to move up a couple of weeks. We're going to have significant games December 20th, 19th, 21st, somewhere in there in the next handful of years with the 12-team playoff. But it's really the transfer portal. Teams that go 4-8 or 3-9, they didn't get it. It took a while for them to get excited. Now you got a program like a Michigan State, new head coach. Maybe we can bring over a new quarterback. All of a sudden, that ignites the fan bases. I believe that the transfer portal has. I know it's crazy, and I know there's some things in college football that absolutely need to be fixed. But I will say this about the transfer portal: it has invigorated fan bases. It has increased the popularity because now, like the NFL, right? If you got a bunch of cap room, if you got a bunch of money, back up the Brinks truck, let's sign the hot free agent. In college football, one of the biggest parts to succeeding in college football right now is a great NIL collective. A fantastic NIL collective. My phone is beeping. My phone is beeping, baby. You know it is December. You know it is transfer portal time when the phone is beeping here during this live program. But if you got a great collective, you can win. I don't care if you're Indiana. I don't care if you're Kentucky. If you've got, now I know NIL is not the sole the sole thing if you have a bunch of money, but if you've got a crap head coach and you got a crap system, it's not going to work. You need, kind of like the NFL, you need money, you need coaching, you need a couple of the pieces, but NIL is a big part to the puzzle right now in college football. If you don't have the collective, you're going to get left behind. Game, set, match, that's the story. That's the story. Okay, folks. Wow. What a morning. What a morning. Let's get caught up on some comments here, and then we're going to go into some other things. We're going to expand. We can talk about Kyle McCord a little bit more. We can also talk about some other transfers. I saw our very first comment today. I got to mention it here from Kraken Hawk. Looks like Will Rogers to Washington is being projected. That was in the title of this stream. I'm going to talk about that because that's huge, gigantic, which might keep our running back there for another year as they played together at Mississippi State. Will Rogers to Washington. That's pretty darn good. I talked about it last night on the live stream. Last night on the show, I brought up Will Rogers' stats. I'm probably going to do it once again. I won't comment too much on it until the commitment is solid, because I want to make sure things are solid with Will Rogers at Washington, but he is currently being crystal balled by 24/7 Sports over to Washington. That's huge. In my opinion, he's one of the best quarterbacks in this portal cycle, and I think if he ends up going to Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb's system in Seattle, that is huge for them to keep up this level, 10-2 last year, 12-0, 13-0 this season, and a college football playoff berth. If Washington, you know they're going to lose a lot of those wide receivers. If Washington wants to keep up going to the Big Ten Conference, it all starts with the quarterback. And nailing Will Rogers, boy, that could be one of the biggest things out there. Our guy Trojan Blade coming in, woke up this morning, roll over to a DM, and I saw Trojan Blade, and I'm like, that's gonna be a crazy day, isn't it? It's gonna be a crazy day, man. What's going on at Ohio State? Boy, I tell you what. I'll tell you what, they're looking to upgrade. They're looking to improve. I think that's the way Ryan Day sees things right now. He looks at Kyle McCord and he says, we got Oregon coming in. We got Washington coming in. We got USC coming in. We need to do better than Kyle at the quarterback position. It is ruthless out there, folks, in college football. It is ruthless in the transfer portal. But that's what NIL has brought us. That's what conference realignment, that's what transfer portal has brought us. It has brought us this opportunity where you can go out and then, one, you can go out and you can get a replacement quarterback. And number two, you can, if you're a quarterback, you can go to a place like Ohio State. All right, let's try to take a deep breath. Let's get to some more comments here. It's an exciting morning for everybody involved over here. Some Buckeyes talking about Riley Leonard. Everybody was talking about Riley Leonard to Notre Dame. But now, that's the thing that I said in my commentary at the start of this deal. When Ohio State's open, you listen. Their track record has proven that you open your ears as well. Rutgers has been talked about out there. Here from Vincent Taylor. Hopefully McCord comes home and transfers to Rutgers. I would maybe lean more towards Maryland than Rutgers, although Rutgers is one of those programs. Gavin Wim said, did he improve? Yes. Did he improve enough? I don't know. They might be looking in the transfer portal for a quarterback because that was a program. We had a lot of them this year. Nebraska, we had Iowa, we had Rutgers, where you had really good defenses. You got Tyreen Powell at linebacker coming back next season for the Scarlet Knights. You had really good defenses, but the quarterback, the offense, was not good, to say the least, and Rutgers was another one of those programs. You had Kyle Monangai, who had a great season at running back. He just didn't have much of a passing attack over there. Cam Ward. Let's talk about Cam Ward for a minute here from Lincoln Riley Enthusiasts. Boy, we're seeing a lot right now, early returns on Cam Ward and what's happening right now. It's crazy. It's crazy right now because for me, it's what is USC going to do? What is Ohio State going to do? Oregon, we have a good idea right now about what Washington is going to do. It looks like they're leaning Will Rogers. Cam Ward is another hot candidate right now. And this from On3, I got to see when this is tweeted, 8:48 a.m., so about an hour and change ago. So I want to get to this right now. This is a tweet from On3. Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Florida State, Washington, and Miami and the Wisconsin Badgers have emerged as schools to watch for transfer quarterback Cam Ward. Cam Ward beat the Badgers the last 2 years. Maybe he's gonna join the Badgers after he beat them the last couple of years as well. So you look at all of those teams make sense. Washington, you could probably cross off the list. If Will Rogers, if that crystal ball rings true, if Will Rogers ends up in Seattle, I think right now for Cam Ward, what you have to do, you got to look at like Ohio State, Oregon, USC. Boy, and Cam Ward is one of the best prospects out there. He's a guy that a lot of people are looking for, dual threat type of guy. He shined at times here at Washington State, had some good receivers over there on the Palouse this year. Man, that is one, right? But those appear to be the leaders in the clubhouse right now. I would say as you're looking at it, the schools on the left with Ohio State, Oregon, and USC they're probably separated for good reason. Florida State's been rumored for DJ Uiagalelei as well. Miami is going to be in the mix, right? They just got a flip from Justin Scott, and he put in his commitment flip, the 5-star defensive lineman, he put a big wad of cash in his picture. It's no secret what's driving people these days. And maybe Miami could back up the Brinks truck to bring, and Wisconsin, right? That's Wisconsin. I think is going to be in the mix for some of these quarterbacks.
From
Need to stop playing that thing at the intro at the beginning. All right, let's get to some more comments as well. Let's get to some more comments. I want to make sure I get to as many as possible here this morning. Thanks, everybody, for coming aboard the show. It is a wild and crazy morning here this morning. All right, let's dive more into it as well. We're talking, a couple people talking about Iowa and Kyle McCord. The Hawkeyes, is Kirk Ferentz, and it depends who the new offensive coordinator is. That's a big deal as to where this whole thing ends up as well. Cade McNamara coming back for a final season, right? Where do things, is there some sort of promise? Is there something happening there where they're going to stick with Cade, or could Kyle end up? I don't think he's at Iowa, but nothing's off the table. That's what everybody needs to understand now. Nothing is off the table. A quarterback, Kyle McCord, that goes 11-1, nearly goes 12-0. And this is news. I got Aaron Taylor coming to me. Is this Julian Fleming entering the transfer portal? Thank you, Aaron, for giving me this comment. Let's check on Twitter. Oh, I think I just saw it. We're getting breaking news as we go here, folks. This is why I kind of came on this morning. Yep, there it is. Julian Fleming. Aaron Taylor breaking some news. There it is. Julian Fleming is in the transfer portal this 28 minutes ago, according to his account. So you're going to lose Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Emeka Egbuka is available. Go to the draft. You're going to lose Julian Fleming. You're going to lose your quarterback. Yeah, I know you recruited some really good wide receivers, but there's going to be a rebuilding of sorts, so to speak, in Ohio State here from this team. It's good. Boy, the Big Ten is going to be ultra interesting here this next season. So we've got Julian Fleming in the transfer portal, the former 5-star. That's a wide receiver, right? He was kind of behind Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka this season. He goes somewhere, man. He could end up being a big time difference maker as well. So thank you for that information as we continue to go on. Dennis Young, Husker fan in here. Arch Manning. Okay, Quinn Ewers, didn't he say he was coming back, I think, next season? Boy, Arch Manning is a guy that if he doesn't want to wait, if he feels like he's ready to go, would not surprise me to see him enter the transfer portal. Don't think he would end up at a Big Ten program. I think I want to say LSU was in on him. I can't remember. I thought there was somebody else in there as well. But Arch Manning is somebody that could be available. But once again, who knows? Cade McNamara coming back for one more year. Crazy what's happening right now. This is what makes this part of the season so expensive. Ducks fan 1 coming in. Cam Ward to Oregon. What's the big prize? Let's say Will Rogers goes to Washington. Right now, Will Howard, the Kansas State quarterback right now, you had Lincoln Riley go out to Manhattan for a visit. It looks like USC is trying to focus in on bringing Will Howard to Southern California. So if you got Will Howard to USC, you got Will Rogers over to Washington, the big questions are Ohio State and Oregon. Michigan is in a weird situation right now, folks. The Wolverines, right? Joel Klatt said during the Big Ten Championship, let's not guarantee yet that J.J. McCarthy is going to leave for the NFL draft. Let's not guarantee that. I think that will happen. But now they're in a tough situation because if J.J. hasn't made up his mind, and of course, he's not going to make up his mind until the end of the season. He's got to focus on the task at hand. He's got to focus on that Alabama defense. So if he hasn't decided yet, it puts Michigan into a little bit of a predicament. Because then if after the season is over, second week, third week of January, whatever, he declares that he's going to the NFL draft, now all of a sudden Michigan, it's well past this cycle, probably when kids have committed. You're past this transfer portal cycle. Now they're kind of stuck, right? Jack Tuttle, the backup quarterback transfer from Indiana, he's out of eligibility. So now can Jaden Davis come in as a freshman and do something? Alex Orji is in there in the quarterback room as well at the University of Michigan. It's tough. It's a tough situation. And then you got the whole coaching thing. Is Jim Harbaugh going to leave? If he leaves at that point, you got to think they just slide up Sharon Moore into that role as well. Cam Ward, where is Cam Ward going to end up? I think where is Dante Moore going to end up? A lot of people right now looking for an experienced quarterback. Who feels that they can take Dante Moore? They can take that raw talent and translate it into success at the quarterback position. Who feels that they can do that? I think that's a big question here right now. Big question of what's going on right now. This kind of came out late yesterday. Aaron Taylor, the number 1 recruit from a couple of years back. Walter Nolan, defensive lineman. What about a tandem up the middle for the Trojans of Bear Robinson, I think his name is, and Walter Nolan. Boy, what a great defensive tackle combination that would be over there in USC. Both coming out of the transfer portal as well. Kraken Hawk, Rodgers for a cheaper price than Ward will want, which allows Washington to spend more on other players. Rodgers to UW is a massive win if that happens. Boy, I tell you what, is the Big Ten Will Howard to USC possibly, Will Rodgers over to Washington. Ohio State, you got to think, is going to get a top transfer quarterback. Will Cam Ward come to the Big Ten at Oregon? Dante Moore. Boy, I tell you what, is the Big Ten, like the Pac-12 was this year, is the Big Ten going to be the conference of quarterbacks? You have Drew Aller coming back. Kyle McCord is gone, but we'll see if McCord stays within the conference. Buckle up, folks. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Things are getting crazy here within this transfer portal as well. So I'm going to check back on Twitter to see if you guys are on Twitter and you're seeing stuff, please put it in the comments. We've got Dylan Gabriel in the transfer portal. Let's check on Dylan because I thought someone tweeted out that there are some potential some landing spots for Dylan Gabriel. So we gotta figure that out as well. Gotta find that tweet. It's not showing up right now, but we'll find it. We'll find it at some point as well. Yeah, USC has been involved with Dylan Gabriel as well. That's been kind of talked about. So, man, there's a lot to be discussed here, and I'm trying to find that tweet where it said who some of the contenders right now were for Dylan Gabriel. Here's the one I was looking at. So I'm going to share that with you right now. There it is. This from Pete Nakos at On3. Early schools to watch, Mississippi State, because he had Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator, head over to Mississippi State. All right? So that kind of makes sense. He's becoming the head coach over there. And then Oregon and SC. Like, and I might do a video, maybe a show about this later, but we can talk about it right now. There is going to be no competition at the quarterback position. Who's the conference of quarterbacks if the Big Ten lands Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward, Dante Moore, Will Rodgers, Will Howard? If all of those guys end up in the Big Ten, they're going to be slinging it. And the Big Ten is going to look different next year, folks. That's why maybe, and DJ Uiagalelei, maybe he ends up in the Big Ten as well. Folks, it could be a big-time shift next season to, I don't want to say the West Coast style of football, because I don't think that's what's going to happen. Okay, I think you're going to have to meet in the middle. But if you have all of these quarterbacks within the Big Ten and you're a school that doesn't have a quarterback like that, you could be in trouble in terms of not making the playoff, in terms of not being in contention to possibly make the Big Ten championship game. If you're a coach right now, you're looking at your boosters, you're looking at your collective and says, look at these quarterbacks on the market. You want to win? You want to sell more tickets? You want to make more revenue getting to the playoff, 12 teams next year? Show me the money. Show me the money, Jerry. That's where we're at right now. Ducks fan 1. I will take Cam Ward over Dylan Gabriel. Of course, Cam Ward gives you the ability, the mobile ability as well within that offense. I'm wondering if Ohio State wants a little bit more mobility with their quarterback. They had it with C.J. Stroud. They had it with Justin Fields. You kind of go back to guys like J.T. Barrett as well at Ohio State. Maybe more mobility possibly is what they want out of the quarterback position. Cam Ward would certainly provide that as well. Dubs up coming. I could understand wanting the Big Ten to take on the conference of quarterbacks, but can the Big Ten develop quarterbacks? Hey, it's a great question. Okay, USC has proven that they can do it. Ohio State has proven that they can do it. Michigan finally proved they kind of had trouble a little bit there, tried with Shea Patterson, but Michigan has proven that they can get J.J. McCarthy to a good level, right? I think Washington has proven that they can do it. Beyond that, Phil Longo has proven that he can do it elsewhere. Can he do it within the Big Ten? That has yet to be proven. So, yes, there are some things that still need to be proven at other schools, but USC, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, schools like that have proven that they can develop a quarterback over time, certainly. Cam Ward to Ohio State makes a lot of sense according to our guy Trojan Blade. It seems like he fits in that offense. It seems like he could fit and be that mobile quarterback that they maybe want at Ohio State to get more. Maybe Ryan Day felt a little bit limited in the offense with the lack of mobility from Kyle McCord. I certainly think that that's something as well. Ducks fan 1. Wouldn't be surprised if DJU ended up at Michigan State. There's another quarterback. I think he was the backup at Oregon State, and I can't recall his name, but he entered the portal today. He entered the transfer portal today, and Michigan State fans were pretty excited about him. I'd have to look up his name again. It's been a crazy morning. There's a lot of information kind of flow into my head right now. So bear with me. Bear with me as we kind of go about this thing right now. All right, I'm gonna view here. Let's talk about Dante Moore for a second. There's going to be a lot of instant pivoting here as this show really goes on. And Ducks fan 1, okay, we're talking about your school here pretty soon. So, okay, let's chat Dante Moore. Remember, he was committed to Oregon, according to 24/7 Sports. I believe it's Oregon, Florida State, Michigan, and Miami. So this would not include Michigan State. Thank you for Aaron Taylor for that. I'll look that up in just a minute. I believe it's Oregon, Florida State, Michigan, and Miami as a starting point for Dante Moore. 4 schools in the mix, put together in a nice looking graphic. Oregon, FSU. FSU's been on some of these transfers. Michigan, I mentioned the predicament that they're in. They got to talk to JJ right now. Are you going? Are you staying? Miami is in there as well. They've proven that they can throw some money around, and they've been kind of mentioned in some of these quarterback conversations as well. Of course, Dante Moore from the state of Michigan. That would be a big replacement. If J.J. McCarthy leaves, you're going to have a lot of people kind of on. I think this is a year, if Michigan wants to stay at the top of the league, they got to go into the transfer portal a good amount because they are going to be losing a good amount. But Oregon, right? Where is Oregon going to go? Dante Moore, will he come home to the Ducks, right where he was originally committed? Of course, home technically would be Michigan, but some Duck fans are saying come home for Dante Moore to Oregon as well. Veteran quarterback, or do you go with a guy like Dante that you can have for 2 or 3 years that you know is talented? You put him into the system. I believe if Dante ends up in the right system, he's going to succeed. That is what I firmly believe. That's what I firmly believe right now. So that's the latest on Dante Moore. Going for gold 85, developing quarterbacks. Maryland is underrated as well. They did a good job with Taulia Tagovailoa, of course, and I mentioned that with Kyle McCord. Maybe he can develop into something at Maryland as well. But hey, at Ohio State, you got all the weapons, you got the system, you got the coaching. Right, you got the track record of what Ohio State has at the quarterback position. If you're going to develop somewhere, it's going to be Ohio State. But this is his first year as a starting quarterback. Who knows to see if McCord can go somewhere else and maybe develop there as well. Lincoln Riley enthusiast, who do you think will start off the hottest in Big Ten play coming into the Big Ten? Talk to me in February. or on day uno of the transfer portal. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback at Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Washington, USC. 5 schools that you got to think are going to be in the running for the Big Ten title next year. I honestly don't know. I don't know. That's a fantastic question. That's tough. USC plays an extremely difficult schedule, right? They play Notre Dame and LSU out of conference. It is such a shot in the dark, and if you want to predict it, go for it. I'm just not in that position right now. I think it's going to be ultra competitive. I believe Washington, Oregon, and USC, they are going to be in the mix. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, you know that they are going to be in the mix as well. That's 6 teams, folks. 6. It didn't even mention, what if Wisconsin does good in the really, really good in the portal? Who's got the backing? Who's got the collective to get it done? What if Iowa's defense is a problem for some folks, and maybe, just maybe, they do something on offense? Who knows? There's so much unpredictable things happening right now. All right. Let's get to some more comments. Aiden Childs. Yep, that's the quarterback from Oregon State that could possibly end up at Michigan State. We'll do a quick Twitter search here to see what happens when we pull that up as well. So, yeah, a lot of people at Michigan State. Of course, Jonathan Smith, the head coach now at Michigan State, formerly of Oregon State. So you got a connection possibly there. We've got apparently highly recruited. Yeah, you look at him, 4-star quarterback, 4-star right now in the portal. So he's going to be highly sought after as well. Kraken Hawk kind of giving some info. It's being reported by an Ohio State podcast that Cam Warren turned down $2 million at Ohio State a week ago. Things change with the McCord news, though. Yeah, because remember, it was Brock Heward that came out in his show that said Cam Ward's got 7-8 multi-million-dollar offers right now to come out of the transfer portal. Insane. Everybody talks about tampering, and I don't disagree, right? Tampering, it's a problem. No one's doubting that. It is a big problem, but how are you going to stop it? That's what I want to know. How do you stop tampering? How do you catch people tampering? We'll see if they ever figure that out. Michigan versus the world. Michigan, who knows? Maybe Michigan will be in the mix for Cam Ward. Cam Ward might end up being $3 to $4 million with bidding. It's gonna start to really. You're gonna see some of these levels really continue to go up. The amount that they're paying for a quarterback, and then you're going to start to see a lot more quarterbacks enter the transfer portal. Ducks fan. Dante Moore is not going to be a Duck. They're not offering him again. This coming from one of our resident Oregon fans here that's been joining us here the last few weeks or so. So appreciate you coming aboard. And yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it. When you look at Oregon, do they go with a proven commodity? Can they land a Cam Ward? Can they land one of these other really good quarterbacks, a Dylan Gabriel? Can they land somebody like that in the transfer portal to continue Oregon going upwards and especially joining the Big Ten next season? Michigan versus the world, this is very brave of you to admit this, and it is the truth. McCord was 1 or 2 passes from being number 1 right now. Like I've been saying, 30 to 35 yards away. Michigan got pressure right at the right time, allowed Rod Moore to get that interception late in the game. Otherwise, they were moving the ball down the field. They were right there. What a wild world we live in. One play. I want to say this. What if Kyle McCord completes that pass, and now they got the ball at the 15-yard line, and they get into the end zone, they kick the extra point good, and they win 31-30. Is Kyle McCord still in the portal? No. Obviously, the answer is no, because they probably go on to win the Big Ten title against the Iowa Hawkeyes, and then they're in the college football playoff. They're the ones maybe playing Alabama, or who knows, right, at that point. who they would be playing, but he's not in the portal. If he makes a couple of more throws, he's still a Buckeye. And Ryan Day is probably sticking with Kyle McCord next season. This is what it all comes down to, folks, sometimes. This is where, wow, it's crazy. It's crazy that's what happens. BK, good question here. How does transfer portal declaring work? Can you return? You can withdraw your name from the transfer portal. So a lot of these guys that enter, you can withdraw your name from the portal. The portal opened today. The guys that were tweeting out stuff and saying before, they were just declaring they couldn't do anything legally. They couldn't do anything and people couldn't recruit them until today. So now that the portal is open, now things can kind of go. But you can withdraw your name from the transfer portal. But a lot of these people tweeting saying goodbye, thanks Oklahoma, thanks Ohio State, things like that. Things like that. Mr. Quote 19, Ward is looking at Miami and Florida State as well. They are going to be in the mix as well. So Kyle McCord, if you're just joining us, Kyle McCord is in the transfer portal. Over at Wisconsin, Chemry Dike and Skylar Bell are at the transfer portal as well. And it's been a little bit since I've refreshed Twitter, so it's probably just about that time to see who else is in the transfer portal as well, and maybe refresh the On3 page as well to see who is entering. There's a great opportunity right now for teams to get better. That's why I cannot make predictions. And if you're making predictions right now for next season, I almost feel it's a little bit irresponsible. Michigan versus the world. McCord could make Rutgers a serious player for Tier 2 in the Big Ten. They were lacking, Gavin Wimsatt, 4-star quarterback. They were all excited about him, but I don't know if it's worked out the way they anticipated in Piscataway. Kirk Shiraka entering his second year as offensive coordinator coming up in 2024. They could be, look at the flag behind me, they could be one of these teams in the Big Ten that possibly makes a move. And then what happens to Gavin Wimsatt? I'm not sure if the thing is, a lot of these other Big Ten programs around them, they're going to see a lot of these programs level. If they get Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward, etc. in the Big Ten, you're going to see a lot of these other programs kind of be like, well, how are we even going to get to bowl eligibility when we're trotting out Gavin Wimsatt? When we're trotting out Hudson Card, Hudson Card's a pretty solid quarterback, but he's had a lot of his receivers enter the portal. A lot of people saying, what if Hudson Card entered the portal? Boy, would that be a disaster at Purdue. That's kind of the one thing that the Boilermakers are really hanging on to right now. Yeah, what happens if all of these things happen? There's a lot of teams in the Big Ten that say, we're not going to have a quarterback good enough to maybe get to 7 wins. To get to 8 wins. We got to make a move. We got to do something. It's a crazy day. One day after the college football playoff selection and where everybody found out where they're coming to bowl season, this starts. College football coaching was difficult enough. Now you add in transfer portal and early signing period into December. It is truly no months off, no time off for college football head coaches right now. Vince Watson bringing up a good point. Tampering has been, and the dealing of money has been around since NIL, but NIL, it's out in the open now, right? It's not hidden. It's not behind closed doors. It's not under the table. Like I said, I don't know how much of a stop you can put. To tampering. I just don't know. I don't know where you put the line. And Vince brings up a good point. Is it going to be revenue sharing at some point? Jim Harbaugh brought that up in his interview with ESPN. Props to you, Jim. But are we going to get? I don't think we're going to get a cap because this is NIL, right? Technically, this is the players' rights to be able to earn all the endorsement deals. You don't put a cap on the amount of State Farm commercials that Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce can do. Why would you do it at the college level? Look, I know it's different. This is kind of acting as a fund, right? A slush fund, a salary to pay players. I understand what it's becoming, but I don't think you can put a cap on NIL. Conferences don't want a revenue share. Schools don't want a revenue share. Not saying that, we'll see what type of federal legislation comes down from this. But everybody could talk about what needs to happen, what they want to happen. You need to live in the reality. We need to live in the reality, and this is just the reality right now. Phil Knight, how much money is he going to pony up to get a good quarterback? To keep that, that's where that's where Washington and Oregon are really at right now. How can we keep up this level going into the Big Ten? Dylan Morris at Washington ain't going to be the guy. Ty Thompson at Oregon looks like he's not going to be the guy. Will Rogers looks like he is crystal balled currently to Washington if you're just joining us. Just joining us. Dennis Young, thanks for coming by here. My favorite Canadian Husker. We're going to have to discuss some kind of caps on players. How much a player can earn. Can you put a cap on name, image, and likeness? Can you put a cap on an endorsement deal? I'm not sure if you can. Boosters are spending so much at the car dealership today. Boy, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on right now. A lot going on right now in the transfer portal. Trojan Blade coming in. What are Wisconsin's biggest needs in the portal? So you're losing Braylon Allen. You look at the running back position, and they don't, Jackson Aker. They got some good freshmen coming in, but you got to think those guys won't be ready to be in a starting role right away. Wisconsin has a lot of needs. Wisconsin has a need at quarterback, right? With now Tanner Mordecai is obviously leaving. And Braden Locke transferred in last year, although he looked decent at times. You'll see Wisconsin in the hunt for a guy like Cam Ward. I think Wisconsin's going to go to the portal in a lot of areas. You see Chemray Dike transfer out. You see Skylar Bell transfer out. Now you do have, I believe, Will Pauling comes back. C.J. Williams, the USC transfer, right? Maybe he can work himself into a starting role as well. There's a lot of areas for Wisconsin. If they want to try to improve, like you look at Wisconsin's schedule next season, do they play Bama? I think that's the year where they play Bama next year. It's an extremely difficult schedule right now for them. So, yeah, it's going to be, they have a lot of needs in the portal right now, but it starts with the decision. Just like a lot of these teams, it starts with where they want to go at quarterback. Do they want to stick with Braden Locke? I'm leaning towards that they're not going to do that. I'm leaning towards that they're going to long go up this roster. Okay, because you had that transitional period, and you kind of saw the transition where you were still hanging on to some of those guys on the O-line, some of those guys at wide receivers. So, of course, Braylon Allen at running back. But now I think this is in Madison. You're going to see the shift. You're going to see this offense open up. You're going to see more players really go and end up at Wisconsin into what Phil Longo really wants. I could see a big-time turnover and change this year at Wisconsin as well. What can you tell me about Minnesota's new quarterback, Max Brosmer, coming out of New Hampshire? We broke that news last night on the show. Of coming over from UNH, was one of the best quarterbacks, the leading passer in FCS last year. Saw some tape on him. He throws a really good deep ball. He appears to be a significant upgrade over Ethan Kaliakmanis. Now, keep this. So I think that's the first really big one. He committed to Minnesota. Gophers checking that box early, so now they can go to other parts of their team. Remember, Darius Taylor announced he's coming back. Daniel Jackson announced that he's coming back. There's a lot of people coming back to watch out for the Gophers. I'm not saying that they're going to make a playoff or anything, but with Darius Taylor, one of the best young running backs in the Big Ten last season, he was kind of banged up a little bit, but he proved that he can tote the rock big time. You got a quarterback in there that can sling things around. You got a wide receiver in Daniel Jackson, and maybe some of these other receivers like Lemeke Brockington and Elijah Spencer can step up to the plate. But I think this is a quarterback that's the first thing that PJ needed to change, I think. And he realized that with Asen going to the portal and getting the guy, Max Brosmer. Now, that might change today, but Max Brosmer, at least as of last night, was a top 10 transfer quarterback in the country, according to On3 and 24/7 Sports. And for Minnesota to grab that guy, even if he ends up being top 12, top 15, with more guys coming into the portal, that's still a big pickup for Minnesota. I tell you, quarterbacks are going to be very good. They're going to be very good in this conference next season with USC, Washington, and Oregon. Those are 3 big-time offenses. And now you see the rest of the Big Ten. They're going to be like, we need quarterbacks, because if USC, Washington, and Oregon get big-time transfers, Ohio State gets a big-time transfer. Michigan, we got Drew Aller already at Penn State. You got to catch up. You got to keep up as best you can. So props to PJ Fleck and the Gophers. I think you can expect a good amount. Not saying he might not even be, like, we got 18 teams in this conference. He barely might be a top half of the quarterback power ranked in the Big Ten next season, in the top 9. Like, that's what's crazy about all this. That's what's insane about all of this as well. Going for gold 85, more comments from one of our resident Husker fans here. It's crazy to me after the season the Huskers just had Matt Rule, was convinced Nash, Hutmacher, Ty Robinson to come back with no other portal. That's good. Okay, this Nebraska defense, of course, we saw the retirement of one of their linebackers. I think that was Henrich. Injuries have kind of dealt him in some unfortunate situations. But, man, having those 2 guys in the middle of that defensive line, Tony White did a great job with this defense year one. You got to think it's going to continue to happen at Nebraska as well. Mike chiming in. Huge Iowa fan. What are we going to do about this horrible offense? Look, injuries halted this offense big time. I don't think there's a world where this Iowa offense was not going to be this bad with Cade McNamara and their top 2 tight ends. Like, injuries really hurt them. You're throwing out a guy like Deacon Hill. Look, you kind of knew what was going to come. You needed to lean on your defense. You needed to lean on Torrey Taylor. You needed to lean on the special teams. And there were some times where the running backs were kind of injured throughout the season as well. So it's a big testament to what Iowa has done, considering that the injuries that they had. They got a bowl matchup coming in here against Tennessee. That'll certainly be interesting to see how that matchup transpires against what the Volunteers really want to do as well. To ensure your comment gets on the live stream today, attaching a donation by hitting the $sign as a super chat is the guaranteed way. I will read all super chats as we talk all things transfer portal. We're going to have plenty of time. We're going to have plenty of time to talk Michigan, Bama. We're going to have plenty of time to talk Washington and Texas, Penn State, Ole Miss, and some of these other big games. But right now, we are focusing on what's happening with the transfer portal, because that's the big news right now. That's the big news right now. And it's all about quarterbacks. It's all about quarterbacks right now in the transfer portal. Just a few other names I saw enter. Zion Young, defensive lineman from Michigan State, entering. I'm continuing to hit refresh here on the On3 transfer portal page. If you see something on Twitter, if you see something, I'm kind of scrolling through Twitter as well. If you see something that comes across, let me know, and then we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. Now's the time. What's crazy about all of this? Now is the time where we are truly going to find out. These next 2 or 3 weeks could determine who wins the Big Ten championship next season. Who can land the big quarterback? Which collective is going to have enough money to bring in Cam Ward or Dante Moore or whoever to be their quarterback? At Oregon, at Washington, at USC, at Ohio State. Who's going to have the money to do that? And then if you have a quarterback You're second guessing things now, aren't you? You're second guessing some things. I think what I'm starting to see within this conference start to develop. If Oregon, Washington, and USC all get great quarterbacks and they find a way to attract some other players to replace the good players that leave, like look at the flag. What's going to happen in that West Division? If Oregon, USC, and Washington are all really good teams, and Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, that's 6. If all those teams are all really good next season, and maybe Washington drops off a little bit, and maybe some of these teams drop off just a little bit, but who's going to step up? It's going to be extremely difficult to step up. Look at those Big Ten West teams. Wisconsin is losing a lot of players today. If they don't nail it in the transfer portal, the Badgers could probably be in trouble. Like you look at a team like Illinois, who was the leader in the clubhouse to win the Big Ten West title in 2022, and they come up short. And now they drop to a 5-7 season. And now you got Luke Altmaier coming back at quarterback. Where are the Illini going to go? Where do some of these programs fit in? That is the thing about consolidation. That is the thing about conference realignment. And that is the thing about the Power 2. I talked yesterday and I got a video on it on the channel. I talked about the Power 2 postseason and the Power 2 playoff. It's here. Ready or not, it has arrived. But I also think that's going to open things up for the Big 12. It's going to open things up for the ACC. Because now those Big 12 schools, they don't have Texas and Oklahoma, the recruiting powers, to deal with. You look at, obviously the ACC is kind of standing pat right now, but who knows what their conference looks like ahead with pending Eastern realignment. I still think it's going to be very difficult for a Big 12 and an ACC school to match up in terms of winning a championship and competing in the college football playoff. There's going to be so many more resources at these Big 10 and SEC schools. Even though all the best of the best are kind of playing against each other in these leagues, I think those will be the best teams in the Big Ten and in the Southeastern Conference. Because you look at the teams, maybe outside of Florida State and Clemson, you look at the rest of the ACC and the Big 12, there's not a lot of big name. You could talk about Utah and what they've done the last few years, right? They've been a good top 10, top 15 program. But I think you're really starting to see the gap between everybody right now. More from Krakenhawk. Washington is going to focus most of their NIL money on defense. We're loaded on offense with players coming back. Jeremy Bernard, I'd expect him for Washington, the former Michigan State Spartan. I would expect him for Washington to really come back and be a big part of this team over at wide receiver. Of course, you're going to lose Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, right? You're going to lose a lot of those guys. Jalen Polk is a junior, right? What happens with Jalen Polk? Right now I'm kind of looking at their depth chart for next season. Jalen Polk could be maybe a mid-round pick. You've got Jalen McMillan and Roma Dunze are true juniors. Boy, you back up the Brinks truck to get them an NIL deal, right? Maybe their offensive line right now appears fairly young. You got a sophomore, a junior, a freshman, a junior, and a junior. Okay, Giles Jackson is a senior. Jeremy Bernard is a sophomore. So you get Jeremy Bernard and maybe Jalen Polk, and you build around that next season. You got Braylon Trice. He's going to go to the NFL on defense. You got a good amount of defense. Yeah, the Huskies will have to rebuild that defense. They're going to have to rebuild some things. No question about that over there. Boy, what a morning. What a morning it has already been. You know it's going to continue to heat up as this thing really progresses in the transfer portal as we keep refreshing the page. We look at Washington defense and corners possibly need to happen at Oregon. Ducks fan 1, Oregon will be up there with Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten. Got to find a quarterback. I know people are going to say, Ted, you said that already, but I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face because it's true. These teams with great quarterbacks, there's been a lot of people, and maybe more traditional people in Big Ten circles saying, well, okay, I see you, Oregon, Washington. I see what you guys are doing this year, but you're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose your great quarterbacks. that's why replacing them is so important right now. You got to think Troy Franklin is gone, Tez Johnson as well. I have him his listed here as a senior. I thought he might have one more year of eligibility. I'd have to look at that, but yeah, you got to replace some guys, right? Oregon is going to have to do some things. Jordan James is going to be back next year. Terrence Ferguson will likely be back at tight end. And then you got to figure out things on the defensive side of the ball as well for the Ducks. You got some seniors to replace over there. So, I think Oregon, like you look at the teams that could be in the mix next season, Oregon, Washington, USC could be in the mix. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, I think could be in the mix. Can anybody else be in the mix? That's the big question I have right now. And this could maybe be the Big Ten we see as a whole. And if you're Tony Petitti in the Big Ten office, I think you're kind of hoping that this happens where you got 3 powers out east, 3 powers in the traditional footprint, and you have some diversity as to who makes the Big Ten championship game year after year. I think that's honestly what they're hoping for right now. Ducks fan thinking Washington's going to be a mid-tier program in the Big Ten. I wouldn't be so quick to say that. I would put on the brakes a little bit. I would say if they get in Will Rogers, a great quarterback in there, I think they can build around that. And they get the transfer pieces to really plug some of those holes. Now, mid-tier might not be bad. You might be able to be mid-tier and still win a few games. But I don't know. Washington has a lot to replace. There's a lot of teams out there that has a lot to replace. A lot of teams have a lot to get done. So it's not just Washington. It's not just Oregon. It's not just all these guys as well. Here's a good point from Krakenhawk. McMillan possibly coming back. Of course, he was injured this season. I still think he can be a pretty high draft pick despite his injury. But who knows? Maybe with the injury, he could be back. If McMillan comes back, I think a lot of this that you're talking, it could be wishful thinking for McMillan to be back, running backs, Polk and Bernard. If this happens and you get Will Rogers, you could be in a similar position next season. Very similar position the Washington Huskies could be in. It's very difficult right now to kind of predict some things because of all the changes of transfer portal stuff that's going on around college football. Keeping an eye on all things transfer portal right now. All things transfer portal. To see who's entering, who's going, where are they going. It's going to be a fun couple of days. And once we kind of start to get some commitments, I think that's when we're really going to start to see some things. Here, let's go to this for 24/7 Sports. This is very interesting. It kind of goes in line with what we talked about earlier. Top 10 quarterbacks. According to 24/7 Sports, this was dropped 10:33 a.m. 10:33 a.m., about an hour and a half ago. They got Aiden Childs as the best quarterback right now in the transfer portal. That's how strongly they feel about him right now. Dante Moore at 2, Cam Ward, Will Riley. Boy, did I already predict Will Howard to USC? You got Riley Leonard right below him as well. But Will Howard, Riley Leonard, Dylan Gabriel, McCord, they got in there at 7. Let's kind of blow up this picture a little bit. And I'm going to lose this comment. Thank you, Krakenhawk there. Aiden Childs. You got Tyler Van Dyke at the bottom. Will Rogers at number 9. That might speak to just how – I know he had a down year at Mississippi State this last year, but that might really speak to how deep this transfer class is this season. Got McCord ahead of Will Rogers? I don't know. Dante Moore up there. We know how talented he is. Dylan Gabriel up there. Boy, that's a lot of good quarterbacks. Will the Heisman Trophy winner. Remember, Jaden Daniels was a transfer from Arizona State. He'll probably win the Heisman this year. Caleb Williams was a transfer from Oklahoma. Right? He won the Heisman last season. Right? It's transfer quarterbacks. We've seen it happen with some of these future Big Ten programs, with Bo Nix, with Michael Penix. They go to a different system that fits them, and they can that are pretty high. Like Bo Nix was pretty highly recruited, and you got talent. You just need to find. That's the great thing about the transfer portal, is if you go to a place that maybe things aren't working out or whatever for whatever reason, you go to a place and then you transfer, and you're a talented quarterback. You can sling the football around. You go to a place that takes advantage of your talents, and things can certainly go well for you. Yeah, you look at all these quarterbacks. Oh, does the Heisman Trophy winner come from one of these quarterbacks? Boy, I tell you, if we feel that strongly about Aiden Childs right now, if he ends up at Michigan State, that could be a big deal. A big deal if he ends up at Michigan State. I want to talk here a little bit about Aiden Childs right now to see exactly kind of where he was as a quarterback. You look at right now, he was the number 2 overall that's the transfer rankings. They have him as the number 2 overall and number 1 quarterback. But if you look at his profile, his 24/7 sports profile right here as a prospect, let me zoom in here because it doesn't show the mouse, but over to the bottom right of your screen as a prospect, 58th in the country, number 7 quarterback right that season. If I click that quarterback, these were the QB rankings. You had Arch Manning, you had Nico obviously going to Tennessee, Dante Moore, Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, right? Maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world with Dylan Gabriel transferring. They feel like Jackson Arnold might be the guy down there at Oklahoma. Jaden Rashad at ASU. They had Aiden Childs right there, the number 7 quarterback in the country. And you kind of take a look at some of these other guys, but if he lands at Michigan State, that's big. That's big. Michigan State is one of those programs with Jonathan Smith. Jonathan Smith is a really good head coach, folks. If he comes in and they grab Aiden Childs or somebody, DJU maybe somebody, transfers to Michigan State, the Spartans could be a team to possibly watch out for. Now, he's got a lot of work to do to build his team through the transfer portal as well. So, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Right now. All right, let's get to some more comments. Right now, it's being reported. Here we go from Kraken Hawk. Being reported 24/7. Tobias Merriweather to wide receiver from Notre Dame. A lot of Notre Dame receivers are entering the portal. I did see that. He could possibly go into Washington. Boy, I look at Washington as a possibly big-time transfer portal destination. That could be, I think there's a lot of kids out there that could end up at Washington. Some of these top wide receivers, they look what's happened with Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan. If they lose a lot of those wide receivers, you could see a lot of those type of receivers like a Tobias Merriweather at Notre Dame end up transferring to Washington. If you're a wide receiver, Washington is certainly a place that you got to have circled. I'm curious to see what the NIL priority is going to be. Can Washington and their collective convince, like some Washington fans here in the chat were talking about before, can they convince some of these receivers to stick around for another season with a quarterback like Will Rogers coming into town? That could certainly be a factor in them staying around in Seattle next season. Transfer portal time is heating up. And if you wanted to get excited, now is the time to certainly get excited with all things transfer portal happening around college football right now. The more I kind of see all of this really go down, the more I get excited about some of these West Coast programs really coming into the conference, because if they can attract some of these top quarterbacks, they can attract some of these top offensive skill players, they could have some success in this conference. Big Ten 2024, and really 2024 across college football in general, it's going to be big time. They can keep up that level, but man, it's going to be interesting to see all of these things kind of clash together. DeBoer will get a raise. You got to think that's going to happen here from Kraken Hawk to the mind. Yeah, he's got to get a raise right now. Grubb, the offensive coordinator. They can keep Kalen DeBoer. They can keep Ryan Grubb. Those are huge wins. They get Will Rogers. All of a sudden, and now they're coming off the momentum of maybe playing for a national championship, at the very least playing in the college football playoff. There's a lot of momentum at Washington. There's a lot of momentum in Husky land right now. A lot of momentum here right now. BK talking about Iowa. Iowa's offense has not been good the last few years. Injuries, poor coaches. I just don't think the offense. I don't think Kirk Ferentz puts a ton of emphasis on it. Like they ride off of their defense. They ride off of their special teams. Phil Parker, right, one of the best assistant coaches, in all of college football. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But to see, this offense, they need to try to find, do they go in-house for offensive coordinator John Boudmeyer, right? The former Wisconsin quarterback has been on that staff. Do they just promote him? Is it more of the same if they do that? It's Kirk's show in the end. That's going to determine a lot what happens possibly with personnel with Iowa down the road. I want to thank everybody for joining here on the show today. I think that's going to be it for today. What a day. Folks, stay tuned on what is to happen within the transfer portal. It is going to heat up. It is going to get crazy. We might have another show later this week. Just stay tuned. Stay tuned. Things are going to be happening around college football. So until next time, I'm Big Ten Ted. We will see you, and we're probably going to see you pretty soon, but we will see you in the next one.